As the wholesome one just said, let's talk Canes. Let's do it here at the Voice of College Football. Leave those comments and questions right there. We will get into it with this guy. The wholesome one's here talking football. Love it. Always enjoyed this time. How you doing this week?
We're doing good, Mark. We're doing good. Taking it day by day. Thankful as always. That's gonna always be my intro, you all. So if you get annoyed by it, sorry, not sorry. Always thankful to who woke me up this morning and to be able to drive the highways and byways and make it safely every Thursday that I can and every day because it is not guaranteed. So I'm always thankful for again the opportunity and to be breathing right here in front of you, man. Because somebody didn't get that gift this morning.
The wholesome one put down close to 2 hours for us last Thursday. So check out that live stream when you get a chance. We went through. Did we get through everything? We did
We
not.
did not. The only
No.
thing that is left is safeties, cornerbacks, and linebacker. And 45 minutes is plenty of time to talk those three positions. And we'll get to it tonight, and we'll do a little over what's going on with Miami Hurricane spring ball tonight also.
Yeah, well, let's start right there in regards to what you've picked up. If there's been anything that's hit you, uh, whether that be video clips or information coming out of camp or anything that has caught your eye.
I got a little bit of everything as far as where those things are going. I also like to listen to coaches' interviews and really take and grasp what they're saying because you can kind of compare and contrast where a coach just looks really stressed, like he just had to do a whole bunch of yelling and screaming and trying to get these young men to get fired up and play some ball. And that's how I really felt Coach Cristobal and a couple members of his staff felt last year. They're trying to figure out the approach. Not saying that it's completely different this year, Mark, but ever so slightly, they're a little bit more smirk, a little glare, a little smile that comes up when certain players are brought up because now you had a cycle, well, technically your second cycle, even though you took the job in December, almost a whole calendar year ago now. But you got guys like a Francis Mauigoa. You have guys like a Samson Okalola. You have guys like a Jaden Wayne. You have guys like a Francisco Mauigoa. You have guys like Matt Lee. You have guys like Javion Clohan. You have all these different people that are now a part of the Brown brothers, Devontae Brown, who we'll talk about now, that are new acquisitions, guys that these coaches would want to wear orange and green and come here because of the quality of coach that our head coach is and Coach Cristobal and the high level recruiter that he's viewed at. So all these guys I talked about were either highly sought after high school recruits or transfer portal guys or a guy like Javion Cohen, who was a big time guard prospect coming out and turned out to be a really good guard at the SEC level. And all those names are a lot of the guys that are popping out. One of the main things that we talk about with quarterback is Tyler Van Dyke seems a lot more comfortable. He's more excited. He seems more light on his toes. He seems more inept to do his leadership role in a scheme that really fits what he does well. It makes him excited to be at practice, makes him excited to go through his progressions, excited to throw the ball around and get the ball out to some big-time guys. We really like what's going on from the quarterback position. All three guys are really excited about the quarterback scheme and what's going on now in the new offense. Again, last season, they were saying some of the same things. The facial expressions, Mark. You know what they say, the one thing that can't lie to you is the eyes. And sometimes those eyes were a little down, a little sad, looking around. And we saw that throughout the season, whether you talk about the injuries, whether you talk about just the complete horrible offensive production almost week in and week out, where guys were just doing their job and trying to impress coach, but at the same time, it just wasn't a good fit. Things didn't work out well. The running back position, you have Chaney and you have I had my first brain fart, y'all.
Well, we've got Henry Parrish.
Parrish, thank you. Henry Parrish and Donald Chaney Jr. Those are your two running backs right now in spring ball. The good thing that I like about that is, yes, they're getting all the reps. Yes, they're kind of getting beat up, but Parrish is a little bit more fresh. Parrish has come in a little bit late, not as shells and pads have been put on our guys. Then Henry Parrish stepped in. Um, but before that, Donald Chaney Jr., a guy who's really shared some fat, really reshaping his body, still has stepped up and done a good job there. Now, they are directly connected to this starting five offensive line in the production. Again, Jalen Rivers moving from guard to tackle. And most people, Mark, when they read that, thought it was a typo. Like, did you mean left tackle, not left guard? Yes. And he is playing at a high level at left guard, at left tackle. At left guard, Javion Cohen, a young man that I'll pause right here and give a little shout out to. He was interviewed a couple of days ago. Mark, when you talk about young men that are fluent and show a certain level of intelligence and confidence when they speak and they articulate themselves, it starts with Javion Cohen. I love to listen to that because it's all over Twitter. And you all know him. I've been trying to kind of come off of my obsession with Miami. Still love it for life. And it just kept popping up. So it's like, man, I'll go watch it. And from the minute he stepped in front of the camera till when he walked away, I really grew a level of respect. What an interview that was with Mr. Cohen. What a great interview. The natural pauses, not the ums and the uhs and the well, you know, and well, we gonna see. None of that. He spoke very, very well, and that's a great thing to see in young men because speaking up, I mean, for the longest, Mark, they hyphenate everything. They give they'll have like 2-letter responses, NP instead of saying no problem. All these little things can affect how we are in our speech. And to see him get up there and to hear about also how he's been just dominating at left guard, that helps too. That helps too that he's a good football player. But man, oh man, I just want to make sure I gave him that shout out because the old adage of dummy football player, big dumb offensive lineman, except for your centers. Your centers are usually varied because they do a bunch of communicating the whole time anyway. But man, I was thoroughly impressed with Javion Cohen. But he's doing a great job at left guard. Matt Lee seems to come out of every single player's mouth. I told the story about his power cleaning and him being crazy and just a fired up dude. But from every player from Francisco Mauigoa to some of the linebackers like Keontra Smith and Corey Flagg Jr. and West Plaisance, because of course they're running into him from double teaming climbs. From Tyler Van Dyke to Coach Mirabal to Coach Cristobal. I mean, everybody talks about this dude and what he's bringing to the table and the way that he is just making sure that he's bringing all the other linemen with him. It isn't just about him standing out. It isn't just about him knowing what the play is and where he's supposed to go. It's making sure that you know that you know that you know that you know. Soon as we get up, the first thing we do is we call out even odd. And we're going from what that means turns into this and turns into that. And before that ball is snapped, we're on the same page as an offensive line. And to know that there are 8 practices in and he's taken that much time since he got there in January to make sure that that kind of stuff is taken care of, that's great. Now, it's one thing, Mark, to do it in the classroom. It's one thing to be able to do it on a dry erase board. It's one thing to do all the talking in the huddle. It's another when you got a helmet, mouthpiece on, and another 300-pound man in front of you ready to knock your head off, and you still are confident in the call. You're confident in knowing that you know, and you're ready to go execute that technique. It's great. Great to see that. Right guard, Arnez Cooper, a big-time young man, and I mean big-time as in 6'6", 340, big, all right, doing his thing at the right guard position, a true mauler. One thing that a lot of people have been, well, not a lot, but the people who are insiders or have seen past pro, is him being able to be a dancing bear. What we mean by that is being able to move on his feet lightly. From what I'm hearing and from a couple of clips I've seen, Mark, he's more of a quick setter. You know what that means, Mark. As soon as the ball snaps, takes 2 steps, it makes you try to go around him, pick a lane, and he punches you as soon as you get off the ball. All right. More Quentin Nelson than a Zach Martin, who's a former left tackle. Both guys, Notre Dame. Both guys, great technicians to a certain extent, but Quentin Nelson never allows guys to build momentum. He just takes 2 steps and kind of keeps his feet waiting on you to come in, where a guy like Zach Martin, a graceful kick slider as a left tackle at Notre Dame, goes to the Cowgirls and is a right guard. And the way that he plays that right guard position is very and eerily similar with the smooth feet. And Inez Cooper is a little bit more of a Quentin Nelson guy. He's a lot more of that, more power, more taking the attack to you. And right now, it's working good and against him. He goes up against certain guys who are quick, who can, as soon as he tries to dip that head down or slam down, can swim right over him or spin around him. And in other instances, he stalemates guys right at the LOS. And that's what happens when you quick set. And as an offensive line coach and as an offensive lineman, there's always things that they can work on. And just being able to point that out is something that I witness and other people have seen is he does a great job of quick setting. He's really doing good at that. What he can do is really work on how he can get a nice kick slide in there and give ground to gain ground, those kinds of things. And at right tackle, I mean, future freshman All-American, probably like number 10 overall pick, and Francis Mauigoa. Not too many people at 18 are plug-and-play starters at the college level. We're not even talking about Power 5 level. We could be talking about Valley City State and the NAIA level, okay? Most people, as soon as they step in, aren't just plug-and-play guys. Well, when a young man goes from California and knows as a freshman that he's going to be something big time, decides to come to IMG for not one season, not 2 seasons, but 3 seasons, who knows I need to go there to perfect and really have them turn me into who I can be at the right tackle position. As an offensive lineman, Francis Mauigoa is just knocking out of the park at right tackle. Wide receiver. Oh, go ahead, Mark. You're about to breathe. Go ahead. You're about to say something.
Oh, I just thought we were transitioning, so you did it. You're there.
Yeah,
White
yeah.
out.
I'm just flowing today. I'm flowing today, Mark. I got a nap in. I rarely ever get a nap in, so
Nice
I'm
to freshen
feeling
up.
good. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm feeling good. I'll shut up soon. Wide receiver, still waiting on somebody to pop. Waiting on somebody to pop it. And that's what these spring practices are for. You have a new wide receiver coach again. You have a new scheme again. Almost the third time for some of these guys, like an Xavier Restrepo. Third different offense in his time here. Third different wide receiver coach in his time here. Third different scheme. Third different way that you want to attack zones and things like this. So it's really breaking down how this scheme, this coach, and the new team of the University of Miami moving forward wants things done at the wide receiver position. Standouts, Jacoby George, a young man that I circled way back in 2020. I really liked his junior tape. Some people didn't, and in the senior tape, he popped. Was a 3-star for a long time. Got that 4-star, got a big bump up, and you see why. Playmaker waiting to pop. Kobe Young. One thing that Coach Kevin Beard talked about today is teaching a guy like that how to work smarter and not harder. What that means is you have a 6'4", legit 6'4", 6'5" build height guy, well north of that 215, 220 range. Well, they just do everything so stiff and hard. Boom, 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 turn, boom, boom. Being able to teach them how to have finesse, how to be fluent, how to sink your hips, how to use the technique side of things. It is a great step in that aspect. And of course, Brashard Smith and Xavier Restrepo in the slot. These are guys that have been brought up that coaches are talking about. We did a wide receiver breakdown last week. I'm not going to go into a whole depth and break down all the guys, but again, a lot left on the bone at that position. This position historically is one of the best. Okay, you could argue Miami as wide receiver, you are at least in the top 10. Historically, we've been far from that. I think besides Alan Hearns in 2013, there was a big stretch from then to Mike Harley in 2020. Was 20? Yeah, I think 20 was the big Mike Harley year. And then the next year in 21, Those are our last 1,000-yard receivers. 3 1,000-yard receivers in 12 seasons. Unacceptable.
And you're talking about Charleston Rambo in 21, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
Rambo. And he got over the 1,000 mark ever so slightly, right?
We'll find out here. I'm
Because if
looking up.
I'm wrong, go
I
ahead
got
and correct me. That
I
don't
got
bother me
Harley
at
right
all.
here. I was curious about Mike Harley's numbers here. Pop those up. Yeah, he went. Actually, Mike Harley, his best year was 799 in
Never even
2020.
touched the thought. It felt like it though. He was playing big time
Yeah.
ball.
Well, they missed 2 games too.
And the other thing about it is sometimes players are able to just he may not even been a great player, but because he was in a scheme that just the routes had a guy at his position open. The play is set up to where okay, if we can go here, we can go here. Well, the safety can only cover one of you if he's in cover two. The linebacker, whoever gets to be able to get in the linebacker zone, we're going to hold him with a tight end, or we're going to hold him with a play action. So all you got to do is just get right behind him, and you'll pop open. Those kinds of things really, really boom as far as guys that just fill the stat sheet based on the scheme. And I think a couple of guys can do that. I want to be very careful with my time because I'll rattle off forever about particular position groups. But again, you have some talent there. You have some guys that's been here for a while. That's Charleston Rambo. Yeah,
Yes.
a shade over 1,000. Well, not a shade over. It's clearly over 1,000. Did
Yep.
well, almost 10 touchdowns. But you have guys that have shown something in Kobe Young, Xavier Restrepo, Bashard Smith, and Jacoby George. You also have guys that have left a lot of meat on the bones to give something to this program as far as scoring touchdowns and making plays. Guys like Redding, guys like Frank Ladson, and then you have young folks like Ray Joseph. You got young guys like Isaiah Horton, who these are pups. Okay, and I don't mean that in derogatory term. I mean it as far as age group. They're just young dogs. They haven't had a chance to be out there long enough to have much of an impact. So that's what you got going on. Tight end is still a little iffy. We're losing Will Mallory, who had a pretty, I mean, Mark, he had the fastest 40 of all tight ends. I'm not saying that's something to jump off the roof from, but it stands out. You know, you had a guy who was a 4.5, 440, and what does he have? 9 career TDs. You know, we could have done so much more with Will. You just passed him out. Yeah, let's go over his career. 14. Okay, look at this. Look at this. Now, in 2022, you could argue that it was just weird what we were doing with him, but it turns out to be his statistical best season. But if you watch that season, you're wondering why are we running behind Will Mallory? What's going on here? He was hurting a bunch of those years. Um, So we're hoping that he turns out to give us something, but at that level, I hope he goes off to have a great career. It'll be great for him because sometimes you get to the right program or right organization, and again, scheme wise, you know, Mark, he messed around and go to a place like the Packers where the tight end is an extension of the offensive line. He's not gonna pop, but he messed around and go like 5th round to the Chiefs, and Travis Kelce gets a little expensive. And you got a guy like this sitting over there that's getting a couple catches a game as a backup tight. I'm just saying. We've seen bigger things happen. Greg Olsen, a guy he was compared to a bunch when he first got here. When he was with the Bears as a late first rounder,
Mm.
he goes to Carolina in the Shula scheme with Cam Newton. You argue he has an opportunity to be in the Hall of Fame because of that 5 to 6 year stretch that he had with the Panthers, where he was one of the better tight ends in the NFL because of that scheme and because he chose to sign with the Panthers. So
wholesome one. Once you start laying down names from the past like that, I got to look at numbers, you know. But yeah, Greg Olson here. My goodness. You're right. It took, well, he was a productive tight end. He caught
Right,
39,
right.
54, 60, 41, 45. But then he gets into this Carolina career, and he just,
Three
73.
straight 1,000-yard seasons,
Yeah, for a
one All
tight end.
Pro, three straight Pro Bowl, first Pro Bowl. I mean, it was, and then of course you had a tail end where things weren't going too well and
Oh,
injuries or
sure.
whatever. But that 4-year stretch there from 13 to 15, he was balling.
Yeah, 742 catches and 60 touchdowns and almost 9,000 yards. Yeah, he's a borderline Hall of Famer.
There it is. There it is.
Let me ask you this, wholesome one. Looking at the wide receiver position, and we have such limited, uh, like you said, limited production to go on. But uh, put the production and what you've seen in the past versus body type versus ceiling, all the physical attributes of these guys. If somebody could become a true number one out of this group, or who do you really like out of this group that you're not predicting anything great, but if anything's going to be outstanding out of any of these guys, who do you really like?
Well, I'll be willing to put my money in on Jacoby George. I really am. Um, because he's not some five. And again, I'm not 6'5", but I'm saying Kobe Young isn't going to sneak up on anybody. Xavier Restrepo is not going to sneak up on anybody. Now, can somebody else on the outside? I even look at a guy like let's go back some years to Miami's last big season. Well, everyone was waiting on Ahmad Richards to take off, and he had a great season, a really good season in 2017. Unfortunately, what happened to him, but thankful that he still has life and he has his limbs and
16,
he can
right?
walk. In 16, he had a good season as a
Yep.
freshman. And in 17, he had like half the production. He was in and out of injury with a hamstring. But I'm saying all that to say, Braxton Berrios took off in 2017. Well, because Christopher Herndon at tight end was starting to make some plays, coming off of David Njoku at tight end, being one of the best tight ends in recent ACC history at that time, playing very, very well for Miami. But a 9-4 Miami, not a 10-3, number two team in the country, Miami at the time. Christopher Herndon is doing well. Ahmad Richards wasn't going to catch anybody off guard because they know who he is. They watched last year and saw how productive he was. Big time receiver. Well, who was going to be the other guy? Well, Braxton Berrios decided me. And he went out there and started to make some plays. Now, Cager played a little bit in and out of the lineup, eventually goes to Georgia and doesn't claim his time at Miami, which is crazy because he got moved to tight end in the NFL. But when Miami asked him to move tight end, he took it as an insult. He's on a roster right now because he chose to move to tight end at game 25. Whatever. Anyway, what I'm saying is when you have a scheme as a defensive coordinator, and you have a guy that's proven, you have a tight end that's doing okay, you have a quarterback that's really keen in on going to who has the hot hand, you kind of pick your poison as who you want to double, who you want to attack. And when it came to Braxton, he decided to take off because who else was going to do it? Whether he was in the slot, whether he was on the opposite side. And majority of the time, it was Cager and Richards on the outside, and he was in the middle handling business. So I know Restrepo, again, isn't going to catch anybody off guard. And Kobe Young had a really good season. Nice stretch, I would say, last year. So if I had to put some money down on who was going to do well for Miami, when I peek in, I'm going to have to say Jacoby George for me. And mainly because I think he'll take advantage. He's a guy who can take a 3 or 4 receptions a game and turn that into 80, not just 30, 35, 40. What I mean is he could make somebody miss and get an extra 5 to 7 yards that other players at that position wouldn't. I don't know if Kobe Young's making anybody miss. I know he'll moss you. I know he can run right by you in some instances. I know Xavier Restrepo will fight you to the death for that football. but who's going to actually pull away? And only two people I know right now, excluding freshmen who I don't know if they'll be ready physically to contribute just yet, would be Brashard Smith and Jacoby George. Those are two guys that I know can take it to the house and take a 8-yard out and turn it into a 60-yard up the sideline once they hit that R2 button.
Well, we could be sitting here in about 6 weeks, and there might be another guy or two in that position that are on the roster that currently aren't. And one guy in particular, Gary Bryant Jr., who caught 44 balls at USC 2 years ago and 7 touchdowns, is making his rounds, and he's looking at, I believe, Texas A&M, Oregon, Arizona, and Miami. So he could be a good addition.
And another thing, Mark, that'll be a great recruiting tool, if we're being completely honest, is this spring game. What was a huge red flag that made a lot of people wonder if Miami is just hiding something from A&M, or is this going to be the offense? And if you go back and watch the spring game, it just was the offense we ran last year. They weren't hiding anything at all. It was what Josh Gaddis ran the entire time up until when Ja'Cory Brown came in and he turned it into, a kind of Cam Newton fest, a snooze fest on offense. Well, there's another window post-spring when players can transfer. And I get this. As a defensive guy, I would love to see the defense play very well. But you turn on that spring game, Mark, and you're seeing receivers pop wide open. You're seeing Tyler throw for 400 yards. Again, in a spring game, whatever. You see them going 4 wide and actually running routes that mess defenses up. That's popping somebody open, that's bombing over the top. That's, we get a good old blitz. Jacoby George just bombed the DB who he caught in man coverage because we motioned him from 2x2 over to 3x1. And he is the inside guy, which triggered a safety to have to cover him. And boom, right over the top, Jacoby George for a 60-yard post. Those kinds of things can be a recruiting tool also to young men who are hitting the portal who may not be happy where they are. And they're like, hey, I can do that. I got 2 years, or I have 1 year. I can do that, coach. I'm from VCSU. I'm from whatever FCS program. I'm from whatever JUCO. I can come in and do that same thing for you if you give me an opportunity. So you can use that as a recruiting tool also. I don't know if you can if the defense is just dominating and it just may not be the best.
Let's pick off some of these super chats coming in. We've got our guy Nefarious 247 showing up. Love H1H. Appreciate you, Nefarious. Thank you so much for being here. And also, I believe we've got Nefarious coming back with this one. Says TVD will have his season and develop the other two.
I think so. I really do. Because I'm be frank with you, Mark, and I guess I can say this now that it's all coming to an end for me. I was very, very terrified that Miami would lose Tyler Van Dyke, and more specifically, lose him to SMU. We talked about this. I asked the guy not to crop it out. He cropped it out, made it into a video about him going to Ohio State, whatever. I didn't say that. What I'm saying is the SMU thing, because a bunch of Miami guys were heading over there. Why? The people that recruited them are there. The head coach that recruited that offense is there. And him and Tyler had a great relationship when he was our OC and quarterbacks coach and Coach Rhett Lashley, who's the head coach at SMU. And I know that Tyler and his family were waiting on who the offensive coordinator hire was going to be for Miami. I truly believe, Mark, if we would have went in another Josh Gaddis, I formation, power scheme kind of thing, even if it's a power spread, if we would have went in that direction, I don't know if he's still here. So when Miami decided to go in the direction of an air raid, even though it's a power raid in there, a very QB-friendly scheme that makes things easy, an offense that has answers, an offense that knows how to attack all different coverages at each level, how to confuse defense, that's a big thing. And I really am happy that Coach Cristobal decided to go into this direction and to trust what is moving forward in 2023. And I know Georgia and the power scheme, the multiple power that they run, has won championships. I know that USC's spread didn't win a championship. I know that Utah has been very successful. I know Coach Cristobal, even at Oregon, was very successful with this power and moving people out and heavy run featuring the pass as a secondary option is good and big. But again, I think that this was the right move, especially to hold on to a prize quarterback like Tyler. Because man, I mean, your center, you all start together. Your center goes over there. Your running back goes over there too. Mark, it was starting to get kind of scary, in my opinion, about what was going to happen with that.
Nefarious. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for this. Team sport players must fit the team to be great.
Okay.
All right, Nefarious. Thank you so much for that. All right. So these spring games. Okay, we got one coming up here in about 3 weeks, I guess it would be.
Yeah. And it's a night spring game, Mark. Wow.
Oh, they're
Man,
playing at night.
yeah, it's a
Okay.
6 p.m. kickoff in the same place that it was last year, so at a soccer stadium open to the public. But I mean, I think all the tickets have already been sold out. I think it's sold out in like 3 hours. Once people found out that they weren't going to be baking in the hot sun at 3 p.m., they'll get a chance to get the humid nights down there in Miami.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't know if I'll be in town, but if I am, I might sneak over. I might say hello.
I believe one of our most watched videos was going live after a spring game a couple years ago. So I'm going to be hitting the spring games hard starting this Saturday with Michigan, and I will be locked in on as many as I can get to. So what matters in a spring game in terms of us as viewers? What can you take away from a spring game that's meaningful, because they seem to be more and more dubbed as not meaningless in terms of the guys getting the work in and the coaches evaluating the players. But you correct me if I'm wrong. This just happens to be another scrimmage. Just there happens to be TV cameras there. So
Correct.
so this is no more important than if they had a scrimmage the previous Saturday.
Correct.
And it might be less meaningful because they don't want to show anything with the cameras there.
Correct.
Where they could be working on things and showing some things that they actually want to, some cosmetic stuff versus just going pure vanilla with the cameras there.
Well, I think one of the other things about the spring game is it's just a sense of excitement. Your favorite sport, if you're a college football, specifically a college football fan, has been gone for months now. Your last time you watched college football, it was a blowout and was awarded a national championship. But in all our eyes, the week before was the two-part national championship of TCU versus Michigan and Georgia and Ohio State, playing what we would hope the actual natty would have been. And a great game of TCU and Ohio State, I think, would have been a great one. Tell you what, for ratings wise, Michigan, Ohio State for the natty would have been out of this freaking world. But back to Miami, spring ball. Even if you like the pro game, the sport period, football has been over since early February with the Super Bowl. So now you get a chance, and it's almost summertime, and in certain places it's warming up. And the minute you start to see spring games going on, you're like, all right, I can smell it in the air. It's coming back. And although it's glorified practice, and some guys are sitting out, and some guys only go out there for a couple reps, it's great for the fans to be able to see, because the accessibility is at an all-time high now. If you were, spring game was the first time you got to see any of these people besides hearsay or reading a newspaper or watching a news clipping of what was happening at your favorite college. unless you were privy to be a student there or knew somebody or can ride by practice every day and sneak over and go, oh man, those guys look good out there. For the most part, you had to wait until you could buy a free ticket, or maybe, I don't know if buy a free or get a ticket to the spring game, or be able to go to a practice to watch and see what was happening. It's a great time to give to the community. It's a great time to get young fans to fall in love with your program. Whether you're giving out free t-shirts, whether you have a bounce house over there, whether you got some cotton candy going, whether you're just meeting and shaking hands with parents, it's a great thing to do, all within the bounds of legalities and according to the NCAA. But it's really that connection, waving to the fans, running by, slapping hands, saying hello, stopping and taking pictures, doing meet and greets with the coaches and a couple of select players. It's more than the actual game itself. I believe it's the whole event. And as far as Miami, they have something that's called Cane Fest. I don't know if they still do it, where all of this stuff I'm talking about would happen. Okay, you got a chance to talk to players. You got a chance to take pictures with players and throw that U up together. And it's really cool, and it's really good for the young men to get a little interview in and sign some papers and things of that nature for them. But the game itself, again, yes, is a glorified practice, but it's a chance to go out there. I remember going to the spring game to watch Duke Johnson. I remember going to the spring game and seeing Larry Hope, who was a 3-star recruit from my high school, American high school, who transferred to Akron afterwards. But it was nice to be able to go see a guy, or we called him Lunchbox at American, who played with me when I was a freshman and he was a senior. And then now is at Miami, and the whole staff and a bunch of players go to support Larry Hope at the spring game. It was just nice to see him out there and see how he looks so big to us, and then he gets at that level and looks so small compared to all the older players who are there. So it's a spectacle, and of course you want to be able. Coach Hayes, shout out to Coach Hayes, he brought up something. You want to be able to give the crowd something to be excited for. One year I went to a spring game, and they had Romberg go out there, Brett Romberg, snapped the ball to Gino Torretta, who did a play action to Clinton Portis, and threw a bomb to Andre Johnson. Just cuz. And the crowd loved it. They went nuts. It was real nice to see that. It's just certain things like that you do to get them all excited, get them smiling, and get them fired up. Michael Irvin gave a speech that is still viewed, one of the highest viewed Canes All Access videos to this day, where Michael Irvin gave a speech right before it. And they mic'd it up and played it at halftime at the spring game to have all the fans listen to it. And that was at Trash Powell Stadium, Nathaniel Trash Powell Stadium. And so that's a big thing too, Mark. So yes, to answer your question, very long-windedly, but to answer your question, there is so much that goes into it. And to just a regular fan, you're going out there to support your team and see how the freshmen look and see how their bodies and how the guys are moving, who's healthy and who isn't. But coaches, man, it's so much that we can do, because another thing you get a chance to do is, how do you react when the lights come on? How do you react when you're getting booed? The oohs and ahs, the chirping. As soon as you're warming up and somebody, let's say a Tallahassee fan comes in and he's talking trash, or somebody saying, oh, you ain't all that, you a 5-star, you can't block so-and-so, or you can't beat so-and-so, because one-on-ones happens. Then they go to inside run. Then they go to a full practice setting, 11 on, full goal. So, and the fans are there to watch all of that. They're there to watch from stretch all the way through to the end. And of course, the first thing all coaches say is we want to be thankful that we get on the other end of this scrimmage or game healthy, meaning we didn't have somebody step wrong and tear an ACL, or a freshman's body that isn't used to the trenches and his ankle gave out because he was trying to split a double team. So all those kinds of things you really hope for the health, and that you send the fans home happy, but you get some great film to break down of how the young men will respond when that pressure and a couple thousand fans are there and it's a 6 p.m. kickoff for a spring game.
Because to me, I've always said this, and again, let me know if this is faulty thinking, but regardless of how vanilla the schemes are and how much you can't take away from a spring game, I would say that the wide receiver defensive back matchups on the outside are
Mhm.
the closest thing that you have to what actually happens on Saturday in the fall.
I would agree, because that's something, Mark. You can't. Excuse my French. You can't half-ass that because you don't want to get bombed.
Yeah, it's
You
pretty
do
much the
not want
same
to get
as a
bombed.
regular game. There's two guys in space, and especially if it's a man-on-man coverage.
And the ball is in the air. Who
Yeah,
wants it? Who's gonna make a play? And especially if that ball is thrown well, look, you got a corner that's been hyped up all season, a receiver that's been hyped up all off season, and you see them go at it one on one, or you see, oh man, that linebacker is a lot more flat footed than I thought. Now, of course, you're watching one on one pass pro. You go, oh man, that DN just ran right around him. But if you look at somebody else who watches that can go, nah, that offensive lineman won that rep. The quarterback would step right up in the pocket. He didn't break at where the quarterback is supposed to and dip and rip at the quarterback level. He just ran around him. You wouldn't know that if you're not, different set of eyes see completely different things. But one thing that a toddler and a 4-year-old could watch, just like a grown adult coach could watch, is somebody getting bombed is somebody getting bombed, especially if you know for a fact that it's man on man. Um, if there's no safety help, let's say it's cover three and you're in deep thirds and he's running a bomb, that pseudo man coverage, it's you against him. You got to figure it out. The safety is being held with a post from number one, from number two, from the defensive perspective. You got to handle this guy on the outside. And do you squeeze him to the sideline and play great technique? Do you panic and just start running instead of watching for the ball and see if it's underthrown and you can make a play on it? Or do you trust your technique? You trust your skill. As soon as you feel him breaking for him, you turn, you flip your hips, you run it side by side, you swatting that inside hand to try to slow him down. And when his eyes get big and turn to the ball, you whip that head around, you look, locate, and attack. Now, whether you get bombed or whether you swat or whether you fight for it, one of the biggest things that a coach could say is, all that pressure, you still did what I freaking asked you to do. You still did it. Yeah, you might have got bombed. Hey, that's a good receiver. But you did your technique, you played hard, you raked through, and you swat the pass. The next time they got you, they got you. Everybody gets beat. But those kinds of things is something that a coach can be able to use when film time comes around to say, oh, no, coach, man, we may not be able to go cover three in pressure situation. I don't trust so-and-so on the island over there because I know they're going to motion and get him in a situation one-on-one. I'm not going to call any names out, but we've seen that happen the last 5 seasons with a particular DB who, when the lights came on, no one was home, and bombs over touchdowns. I'm not going to use that other term; it's pretty wild, but just a lot of bombs, and well, we get clueless, and sometimes you get so tunnel vision, and the moment is too big, and it's a lot of pressure. And a big thing with that is confidence, man. If you're confident and you know, hey, it's practice. I got beat, but I practiced my technique. I practiced not bailing instantly. I practiced standing here, beating you with my feet, moving, and as soon as you broke, I broke. Being patient in zone coverage, letting you come to me, or hey, you know what? I'm gonna try something. Let me go attack this. I feel like he's about to do an out. If it's an out and up, I'm gonna just say, Coach, I bid on the out because I wanted to get a pick. But you got to try those things, and this is what your practices are for. This is what your spring practices are for, so that you can really build the confidence in your game, in your scheme, and how you play. That's what spring ball is really for. Because once training camp comes in, Mark, we're really practicing for the fall. But spring ball to coaches and players, man, it's I hated it as a player because so much running and lifting and getting beat up. But you really win your games in the fall right now in what you're doing.
Reggie Anderson says, wholesome. You'll be missed. I hope to see you on the sideline one day for Canes. Thank you for the insight and analysis of the game film.
Thank you. Thank you, Reggie. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a dream of mine. And I want to create a resume to where that is attractive for Coach Cristobal and we can make that a reality um, down the line. But again, this isn't the last one. You all, we do have one next Thursday that will be the H1H's college football farewell show, which will be also followed up by my live April 10th, 2023 at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your boy will have his final live. Um, where Mark will be there and Coach Hayes will be there and a lot of other people from my past will be there, whether they're there for a couple minutes or just hop in the chat. But yeah, we're definitely going to get that out there and we're going to have a great show.
So again, to be very clear about this, the Wholesome Ones finale, you see it in the banner, April 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Wholesome Ones channel. The Wholesome One here with me for a final time next Thursday, regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll have a great one. We had the 2-hour one. That was amazing. And it'll always be a great relationship between me and Mark. Off camera, of course, he has my personal. And just make sure you all stay tuned. And I'll make announcements on Twitter once I decide where we're going to go with it and what school or opportunity I have accepted. And hopefully y'all just support me and love on your boy, send prayers and blessings my way. And if you hate, that's okay. I still love you.
He is the Wholesome One, and our channel is what it is because of this guy. So we appreciate you, man. You give a lot of honor to, of course, our Wednesday guy, Cam Underwood. You two have basically been the two pillars here on the channel.
Absolutely.
No question about that.
Absolutely.
So again, you see it right there in the banner there. You got to set that aside, everyone. April 10th, 8 o'clock Eastern Time on the Wholesome Ones channel. And then, of course, you got to be back here next Thursday as we will do it up, talking Miami football, reminiscing, whatever we want to talk about. It may not be the usual show, but we will have a good time nonetheless and want all of you to be here with us.
Absolutely.
All right, sir.
Absolutely. Y'all be blessed. Have a great day. Thank you, Mark.